This is the CEO session, and where we are trying to bring together the heads of companies who provide cloud solutions, technologies, and services, and we are asking them to address some of the concerns and questions you as IT heads and IT leaders have about cloud technologies. So I'd like to first invite on stage Dr. Pramas Sinha, Managing Director of 9.9 Media, who will be moderating this session. May I request you all to please welcome him. May I request Mr. Rajesh Rege, Senior Vice President, Data Center and Cloud, Cisco Systems India, to please come to the stage. Good evening, Rajesh. Thank you for being here. Invite Mr. Virender Agarwal, Chief Executive Officer, Ramco Systems. Mr. Jagdish Mahapatra, Managing Director, India and SARC, McAfee India. Mr. Rajesh Jani, Managing Director, India and SARC, Polycom, EMC Corporation. My apologies. Mr. Neeraj Gill, Managing Director, India and SARC, Polycom. Mr. Nikhil Arora, Vice President and Managing Director, India, Intuit India Software. And Mr. Sandeep Mathur, Managing Director, Oracle India. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. And I would also like to invite Mr. Bikram Seth, CIO, healthcare company. Mr. Bikram Seth. Mr. S.C. Mittal, Senior ED and Group CTO, IFCO. Thank you, sir. So Ms. Gigi Umal would be joining us a bit later. She's been delayed. So over to Pramat to you to start the session.
Thank you, Giri. A warm welcome to our galaxy of CEOs who are present here today. Thank you all for coming, and I know that several of you have concerns because this is positioned as a debate and so on, but please be assured that there are no difficult questions here. These are the genuine questions that have been raised by our CIOs in a survey that we did. We ran a fairly detailed survey of all the people in our database who read CTO Forum, CIO&Leader, and who regularly come to our website. And so the way this will run is that I have a bunch of questions which are culled out of the CIO survey. And I will pick any of you at random and pick a question, ask you to comment on that. As you know, there are no right answers to these things, so don't worry, we are not recording you. We are not going to hold you for what you say. So the question will be first directed to somebody, and you'll take the question and give us an answer. And then we'll ask one other person to comment. So you can volunteer that. There I will not ask you, but if one of you want to add to what one of your colleagues has said, please let me know, and then you can add. And then we'll turn it over to our CIOs to ask a supplemental question to that, to again the same person who got the question. And then we'll go through each of you. So unfortunately, nobody is off the hook, and you all will get a question. Hopefully these questions are all different enough that we will have enough interest by the time we get to question 7. If we have time at that point, we will open it up to the audience for some questions as well. Let me be random about this. Okay, this is a good one. And Maybe I can ask this of Rajesh, not just because you're sitting next to me, but I just picked a name out. What are three measures, what three measures can a cloud solution provider take to assure enterprise customers that they are long-term serious partners? What are three measures a cloud solution provider can take to assure enterprise customers that they are long-term serious partners? And here, assure is in bold and underlined. I'm sure that is how the question was asked. So, Rajesh, if you could take that first one, please.
Okay, I'll try to answer it. And it has to be probably linked to what are the concerns that a customer has, right? That means what I get from your question is there is a concern the customers are raising that I'm not sure if I go with a service provider. So it'll boil down to why they are not sure, right? So based on that, maybe I'll try to, and feel free to add whatever you have. First thing I would say is delivery to a service level agreement, right? Cloud is a journey that every customer is probably trying to take to a service provider, whether it's public or private. But in this case, it is public, so I presume that's why there is a service provider. It's very similar to when outsourcing started. When you were outsourcing, the worry was, will you be able to find skills? Will you stick to my SLA? What is the governance model? Very similar thoughts are emerging now. So I would say first and foremost is service provider should define a SLA, put in a governance model in place that how will you deliver to that SLA. Third, I would say assure about the security of the application, infrastructure, customer data, whatever you have. These are the three things I would like to put on.
Well, thank you, Rajesh. That's a model answer, if I may say so, because you really stuck to the three measures. And would any of the other gentlemen like to add to that?
Yeah, assurance is.
Well, just yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No.
All right. So just to add to. Sorry.
Yeah, that's on.
All right. Yeah. So the only thing I would add to that, and in some sense, I would agree with Rajesh, but the moment you create a competitive environment, and in this case, how do you create a competitive environment? I think if you are standards based and you offer choice, it will force you as a service provider to then offer the most competitive deal to the customer, because the customer has a choice to move. Right? So I think if you're, as a service provider, if I'm standards based and I offer the choice of movement from my platform to somebody else's platform,
that gives them the assurance.
That gives them the assurance that you will serve me for a longish period of time, kind of a thing. That's the only thing I would add to the security and the other concerns.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah.
Did you want to add? The format only allows for one intervention, but I'm willing to ask you to add to that if you'd like. It's not on, if you can just, yes, go ahead.
Yeah. It would essentially be about what kind of contractual frameworks you have and what leeway those allow you to move, and what kind of confidence you are able to convey to your prospective customers about the longevity of your infrastructure and the longevity of your business. Because if I am looking to set up something and move completely into a managed environment, then I need to know that this environment is going to be there for the next several years and that I'm not going to be stranded. And if that potential possibility exists that I may be stranded, then if I need to move out, then what access do I have to my data? Am I contractually bound that irrespective of what happens, will I go down with the company going down, and
Sure.
so on and so forth.
Sure. No, thank you. I think that builds on the point that was made earlier by Sandeep. Would our CIOs like to ask a supplemental question on that one? Vikram or Subhash, would you like to?
Okay. Mr. Jani has said about migration, from one service provider to other service provider. No, that is one of the most difficult situation, that to move from. And that's coming in the way of how cloud is moving. That is, I can say that is the most challenging situation to move from one service provider to other service provider. And if you talk about say infrastructure as a service, it's still easy. But when you talk about delivering SaaS as a services, this is one of the most challenging situation. I don't know, on what basis you have put forth your argument for migration, and even Sandeep has said the same thing. So how it is going to be? Because you know that when you are delivering the SaaS services, No, it is at expert services which you are making available to any organization. Okay, and in any organization, the application modules does not run as it is. Even if you go to the ERP space also, there is a lot of industry-specific knowledge is required. A lot of customization is there. Okay, and moving with this industry knowledge and customizations to other service providers is a real challenge.
Thank you. If Rajesh, you want to take that first since it was your question? It's not on, yeah. Now it's on.
I have nothing against it. Absolutely. Standards and migration is a key part because as a customer, you don't want to be locked in with any of the service provider or any of the technology, clearly. So I had no against it, and I'm all for it. There has to be evolution of standards and an ease of migration for customer. But as you said rightly, SaaS is a different breed altogether. Infrastructure still easier to do. Via, you want to add something?
Yeah, go ahead.
Since I'm from provider of services SaaS in the ERP field, I must say that it's difficult moving from one ERP to another on-premise or on cloud. You must have an assurance that you can get your data into flat files or the format that you want. Otherwise, the journey is as difficult as you change in today's world, whether it's on cloud or on-premise, it won't matter. You'll have to do the re-customizations and you may have to do the re-implementations and the knowledge thereof. So in cloud or non-cloud, it won't make any difference. It is a challenge. It stays a challenge.
I'm going to stay to the format, otherwise we'll never finish on time. So I'm going to move to my next CEO. Viren, since you had started to answer, let me ask you the next question. And this is an interesting one. Who should decide, and this time decide is bolded and underlined. Who should decide on cloud solutions? CIOs or line of business heads? So should the supply chain, marketing or manufacturing head select a cloud-based service? And if so, what is the role of the CIO?
I'll just briefly comment on that. It's been moving away from CIO. Most HR departments select their own HCM, and many select their own CRMs. And it's primarily happened because the CIOs kind of became disconnected with the business. So many decisions started being taken by the lines of business. And also with the consumerization of IT, with everybody bringing their own devices onto premises, people said, when I can use such cool applications, why does my own application look so clunky? So there's a tremendous burden to make sure the applications that an organization have runs on mobile platforms, runs on iPads, bring your own devices are there. And the outlook of the CIO is not to build more data centers and an army of database administrators and so on, but to focus on what value they can deliver to business. If they focus on that, then the life of CIO will flourish. Otherwise, very rapidly, users are taking control.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let me just add a little bit. I think relevance of the questions kind of really going down because I think the cat is out of the bag. The CIO doesn't have a choice. I think the whole fundamental genesis of giving a better business agility is forcing some business leaders or LOB leaders to take that call. I have seen people who've taken that call and then probably worked with the CIO to ensure that those mandates are taken care of. So cat is out of the bag. So I don't think there's any choice there.
Okay, very good. Sandeep, I think you wanted to make a point. Do you want to quickly make that point?
My point is, and somehow, till now the discussions we've had, this thing seems to be really tough. Well, it's not. It's easy. Somebody said this was like outsourcing. It's not. The levels of entry barriers to outsourcing are very high. To cloud, they are not. So if you limit yourself to basic stuff, which is having standards, all of that, I think migration or all that should be relatively easy. So I'm answering a different question. But who should make the decision on this? If the line of business makes the decision, which has kind of happened till now, you will end up with cloud silos. So you will go back 20 years. Right? Because marketing guy buys their own cloud, and that's happening today. So it's happening today. As we speak, people are buying cloud solutions, right? Ignoring what your corporate IT is doing. So I think the role of CIO really now is to start leading this change and become a part and parcel of that whole strategy. So first of all, you've got to have a cloud strategy. If you don't have one, build it right away. And once you've got that, I think you've got to work with business and figure out, because like I said, entry barriers are really low. If you don't like a cloud solution, throw it, get a new one. Now, I know your concerns. I think, you can't throw any ERP out that easy, but there are lots of other solutions that you can throw out and bring them in, provided your data and everything moves. So if you're standards-based, you should be okay.
Thank you.
But I think the CIO has to be at the heart of that. Otherwise, you will end up with cloud silos.
Thank you. That's sure.
So I think, for this particular aspect of it, perhaps I differ a little bit. And in my opinion, line of business.
Can you just move the mic towards?
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
Line of business at the end of the day needs to be consulted. We need to figure out which business areas, which business processes will move to the cloud and are capable of moving to the cloud. Some may or some may not move to the cloud.
Sure.
And I think from that perspective, the line of business owner is very definitely a key decision maker, but it's not necessarily the final decision maker. So the line of business owner has to be consulted, and the line of business owner should frankly also come to the CIO and say, this is what I would like to do. And then it's up to the CIO to look at various delivery options and various delivery models and get that actually enabled. A line of business owner is not going to take a decision to move to a particular cloud model. And that decision ultimately has to be coming from the CIO, because the CIO is going to be responsible for running it. But at the end of the day, what is to move to the cloud is something that the line of business owner should come and say that this is something that we believe we could actually take to the cloud.
Thank you. I think we've had a rich discussion on that, but I see all of you saying roughly the same thing, that it has to be done jointly in some way. So,
agree with that approach.
And any other questions you have? If you don't,
No, only one thing I want to ask is, we talked about moving and all is on a technology aspect. What about the financial impact?
We'll come to that. So those questions we have in the back pocket yet. But I think this was really about this trade-off between the CIO and the LOB.
I want to add one thing here, what Mr. Neeraj Gill also said.
Yeah.
One is, it depends on what kind of applications you want to move to the clouds. This is number one. Number two, the decision, when you talk about decision to be taken, I think decision is to be taken jointly. CIO has to be a driver. You cannot forget the role of CIO. But then he has got a responsibility to make the business leaders or the CEO to be aware of if they move to the cloud, what may be the consequences they should be ready for.
Yeah. Good. Thank you. Thank you for that comment. Let me turn to Nikhil Arora, who's been somewhat silent so far. And here's a question for you, Nikhil. As a CIO or business owner, I have made a lot of investments in IT infrastructure and solutions already. How do I justify the move? So again, this is really about not just the cost trade-offs, but really the fact that I have a lot of sunk cost already there. And therefore, what complications that does create for my justification for the move?
Thanks, Pramit, and thanks for hosting such a great event, and also the wonderful work you're doing in the education industry.
Oh, thank you.
Intuit is a company which is focused on small businesses worldwide. So I'll perhaps take another angle to this question around, the sunk cost or all the investments which have gone in. So from an India perspective today, if you look at the IT or cloud adoption rate in small businesses, it's in single digits. And the three biggest barriers to that adoption today we find when we talk to small businesses is around cost, second is around awareness, and third is around lack of skilled resources, which is around, hey, I hire people, I train them, and then they leave. So from a sunk cost perspective, I think in small business, actually it's an opportunity, because the adoption has been very low, even in big infrastructure. People work on Excel, people work on, kind of homemade software. So in fact, the opportunity is to actually highlight, hey, this is a pay-as-you-go model. You can actually, scale the business according to as you grow in that sense. So I think from a small business angle, I would say, justification is very easy, because in fact, if you're a small business, you're time poor and money poor, and this solves for both. So I think in that point, the value prop is pretty strong.
Okay. Given that you are from Intuit, which is such a big financial software, I thought you would say sunk cost isn't exactly sunk. So, sorry, I'm helping your answer. But anybody else want to comment on that? Yeah.
Maybe add a little bit. I think the driving force of cloud, all of us understand, is, from a finance standpoint, you get a better return of capital employed, better ROC. But you also save on your operating cost, and fundamentally, I think you get a business agility. So people who are stuck with incumbency, most of the CIOs will have this challenge of having invested in an infrastructure or investment which will which is a deterrent to adopting cloud. I think cloud can't be seen as another investment which gives you depreciation benefits, and you probably know that better. So I think the real question is your current infrastructure investment slowing you down? Is it good enough to address your business needs? If the answers to that lies with your current investment, stay with it. If not, then look at cloud from that standpoint. That will be probably my view there.
No, thank you. That's a good way of putting it. I'm going to hold the CIO question for one bit, because the next question is also about cost and investment. So let's have this one answered, and then I'll give you the chance to ask, and maybe you can ask 2 questions if you'd like. Neeraj, this is an easy one. This is a much beaten up topic, but it still keeps coming up. It doesn't go away. And I'm trusting that you will have a different take on this. So the question is, will moving to the cloud really save money? It's not over yet. It says, what are the hidden costs and gotchas? So what am I going to get hit by and surprised by that I don't already know?
See, first of all, a couple of things. I think one, the reason for moving to the cloud should not always be cost, or should not be cost. Right? At the end of the day, cost is one of the factors. And if it saves you cost, that's wonderful. But from a perspective of, you need to look at what are the applications that you're moving. Does it give you flexibility? Flexibility to, grow whatever your requirement may be, to scale down the requirement if the requirement, actually needs to be scaled down at some point in time. So I think all of those things, first of all, need to be taken into consideration. And I think from a perspective of whether it will save you cost or not, is something which each CIO will actually have to go into and figure out that if this is whatever solution they're looking for instance, let's say in video conferencing, which is our forte. So if you look at that, there are 2 ways of doing things. One is actually to have on-premises, your own equipment. And on-premises can also be a cloud, by the way. This is an internal private cloud that you're running. For instance, a lot of banking organizations don't want to run a private cloud. They don't want to, actually use a public cloud at all. And simply because privacy is an issue.
Sure.
Now, if that is the case, it is still a cloud, but it's not necessarily, you're not looking towards saving. Of course, you're looking towards the flexibility of deployment, of growth, so on and so forth,
sure,
of software-based models, etc. Now, in reality, whether it actually saves you cost or not is going to simply depend upon how well you have judged as you make a move from, say, on-premises based to a public cloud-based offering, and on how you scale those things out. So, in my opinion, this is something which is not necessarily a answer which is always yes or always no. I mean, that's never going to be the case. So it's always going to depend upon how you're deploying this, how you're going to grow, what calculations you made when you're moving. And in any case, it could be, where you've actually got a hybrid model, where you've got an on-premises based model, and you've got something which you use from a public cloud to supplement whatever you've got. So I don't think the answer always is, certainly it's going to save you cost, or no, it's not going to save you cost.
Thanks, Neeraj. Anybody want to add to that?
Yeah, I'll probably add and support your argument.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a function of what is your driver for moving to cloud. Cost cannot be the only driver for moving to cloud. At times, as you said rightly, it could be business agility, scalability. How do you get all that? And cost could be one of those. And as is with any deployment of technologies, CIOs or business owners will have to do a ROI that in order to achieve this business result, what is the investment I'm making, whether it is sunk or not, whether it is new or not. That's all factored into.
Nikhil, you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I think just in addition to the automation and flexibility, I think the #1 problem for small businesses today is how do they grow their business? And a cloud actually provides them access to that information real time. And I think if you flip it around, not only cost, it helps them grow faster. I think that's a very strong argument we've seen worldwide.
I think that's fair. So may I ask our CIOs if they have any?
Okay. On the cost angle, I've seen, again, this is my understanding, that in the long run, maybe you spend more costs on when you move into cloud. But as you rightly said, some of the panelists said, it's not the motivator to move to cloud. It is, you should try and move applications which are not your core applications and which can work, and start moving those to the cloud rather than trying the ERP, and which are a lot of customizations involved, because that would add to your humongous cost and plus may not be even available on the cloud as an option there.
Mr. Mittal, you have the chance to ask a question.
No, please.
Yeah, when we talk about the cost on the cloud, it's very difficult to say whether it is going to be ultimately high or low. But one thing is very clear, that when you save on one side, maybe on maintenance part of, again, the infrastructure, you may save on that. But at the same time, to my knowledge, no benefit is being given by the software provider in the cloud space. What I mean to say is when we talk about license cost, okay, no, the policy is almost the same whether you are going to own the license or you are going to make use of the license.
Pay per use, yeah, okay.
Pay as you use.
Pay as
So till the time, unless that situation comes, because ultimately if you see, for an industry like who is matured on IT part also, the IT exists there since a long 20 years, 30 years. The cost on the hardware side has really gone down. And the cost is going up and up and up on the software front. And in this cost also on software when we talk about, 50-50 is the cost of the license. So unless otherwise the license cost in cloud environment is reduced, I don't think that it is going to be an economical situation.
Any comments from our panel? Yes.
See, I don't know what license cost you're talking about because we provide our ERP and people pay monthly subscription. There is no upfront license fee. So if you are a true multi-tenanted cloud vendor, if you are just ASP provider, then I can understand that's a false cloud. That's not a cloud, that's pretending to be cloud. So if it's a true cloud provider, you just pay at best quarterly advance subscription. That's about it. So there is no question of a license at all. If your number of subscribers go down, your cost goes down. If it goes up, cost goes up. So based on what you use, there's nothing else to it. So there is no question of any license being paid. Then you don't have any, if you're truly on cloud, you don't have any outlooks with you, you don't have any army of maintenance staff that is there, or database administrator, Unix administrators, disaster recovery, and all the stuff, virus control, all the stuff goes on. That all goes to the cloud provider. So if you see the true cost, you'll have to take out the cost of your IT staff as well. And if you're talking of pseudo cloud provider, ASP providers, then they are not cloud. They are pseudo cloud.
Can I ask one question?
Yes, sure.
Again, I'm saying maybe that I may not be aware of fully, but to my knowledge, if suppose 1,000 users you are having in your organization, okay, who are using, say, Oracle ERP or Oracle database, or even the emailing solution if we take up Lotus Notes and other things. No, your number of users are not going to be reduced when you are moving to the cloud. So 1,000 users who are using as on today, if you are not in a cloud situation, are going to be the same when you are moving to the cloud. So as far as usage of the 1,000 users, whether they use it for 10 minutes or they use Lotus Notes for the entire day, the license fee is going to be the same. I'm not aware of is there any benefit or attractive concessions are being passed on under the ESP model.
When is that your point that frankly that's not a real cloud service? That one of the questions.
So I think we must differentiate between ASP model. So let's not confuse ASP model. Vendors will charge you license fee. I mean, where have you heard of Workday, Salesforce, Ramco? We never charge of any license fee. We just charge of pay as you go.
So can we move away from this payment business or the advantage to one of the questions that was asked, and if I can ask you all to respond to this, that what is the difference between a real cloud solution and what you said, I don't know what word you used, but pretend cloud solution, right?
So one is, you host it in a place and charge the person the license fee amortized over a period. You or your partner would do it. Second is a true multi-tenanted cloud in which it's a shared database by a lot of companies. That's where the savings come from. If you're going to create a separate database, separate instance for each customer, then the savings are not there. The vendor is doing database administration or Unix administration or app administration for you. Only if you are on a shared all environment with a true multi-tenancy, that's a true cloud. That's where the savings come from. But right now, since everybody wants to be cloud and nobody wants to be left behind, and people can't differentiate between a true cloud and a non-true cloud, so everybody is trying to be cloud. In the process, the buyer community is getting confused. And they are charging money from an ASP model.
So thank you. Let me turn it over to Rajesh now. Rajesh, I'm going to ask you to kind of put yourself in the shoes of the CIOs and want to ask you, what do you all see as the three biggest barriers to CIOs adopting cloud. From your perspective, what are the biggest issues? Because I'm sure there's some match, but there may be a difference in perception.
Yeah, so to put myself in the CIO shoes is a big task to happen. I'll take a shot at the question. Typically in my conversations or our collective conversations with CIOs around, there are 2 or 3 things that typically come up as areas of further discussion or debate. One is the sense of confidence that people have on what kind of SLAs and what kind of data confidentiality will I get. So am I doing the right thing? If this conversation has to proceed, then am I getting trapped with somebody who may or may not be there for the long term? The second question is in terms of is this going to take control away from me from an IT decision making and those kind of points. The third is I have so much invested right now. Pretty much what I need has been catered to. My challenges are on an incremental budgeting and incremental project management. So if I need to move, then what do I do with what I have right now? So these are the 2 or 3 things that pop up. But increasingly, I'm seeing that there is a whole very, very strong support coming in, at least for moving the internal infrastructure to a cloud kind of an environment. Okay, so a lot of large companies are very proactively putting private clouds and figuring out how they can then monetize that infrastructure more effectively across different groups. So the concept is embedded and understood. The question is how much are people willing to stretch? Are they willing to move completely over? So I think we are still a little distance away from that.
And if you want to, I know Sandeep you have the hand up, but just to complete that thought, I'm now going to put you back in your shoes and ask, if you had to suggest a couple of things to some of your CIO friends or people you work with to make the decision-making process easier for them, and now you're at least not in this sort of environment of trying to sell or trying to convince. Very objectively, what would you have them do to get better at this decision-making? Because it's a tough decision. I mean, we all know it's complex. Yeah. But how can they be better informed? How can they take better decisions?
Well, fundamentally, I think knowledge and information is there. So, meaning I have seen tremendous amount of information resident with CIOs. But at our end, what we typically try and do is to move the conversation to a phased-wise adaptation of cloud, right? Meaning if you are completely siloed environment, you could do with consolidation and virtualization of the infrastructure. If there are certain non-critical business applications that you have, then maybe a couple of them could be, moved over onto a public cloud provider, right? And that way you build experience on, getting the organization aligned on some of these shifts that are happening. Because cloud as a technology is here to stay. It is a question of the confidence that one needs to, generate internally, and for the organization to rally around that confidence and make the shift. And there are some people who've done big shifts, and there are others who are a little behind on the entire adaptation curve.
Thank you. Sandeep, you had a point. Would you like to?
Yeah, so, a couple of points. I think when we talk to CIOs, compliance and regulation comes up all the time. And there are certain industries where, because of compliance and regulations, you can't go. And a lot of our discussion has been predisposed towards a public cloud. And I'm glad that Rajesh brought up this whole notion of that you can also do a private cloud setup. So clearly I think if you want to use your existing infrastructure, go the private cloud route and so on and so forth. The other comment I would make is that, again, you keep on hearing of the notion of a non-critical business application as a good candidate for the cloud. Well, guess what? Most of the cloud providers, the way it started was because of Salesforce automation. Now, if your customer data is not the most critical application, I don't know what is. So, people have put their customer data out there, right? So if you've put your most critical application out there and that has been the biggest success, I think anything is up for grabs. It's just that why are you making that decision and why do you want to go there? And I think the biggest reason is not cost, it's probably agility. If you're looking for agility in an application, in a business arena, and I think that's where the gentleman here was talking about in terms of small businesses adopting it. I think if you're looking for agility, I think that's where that immediately becomes a contender for a cloud application. That's what I would think.
Good. Over to our CIOs. Any questions about?
See, coming back to I think one of the first points which we talked about, it sounds good, all this stuff that you can agility and all, but end of the day, if you are unhappy with one provider and you cannot move, as a CIO, you always go back to that there is no standard. So if you're unhappy with, say, ERP1 and which doesn't function, you cannot just take your data and walk off to the next guy across the road. So that is one showstopper. Again, I always hear of from a technology aspect, you can do this, but I don't know if that happens, but are there any financial commitments which the vendors are going to put on the table, that if this doesn't happen, this is a kind of a penalty, which kind of gives you that, okay, they are confident about what they are delivering.
Yeah. So did you want me to respond to that?
Yeah, of course.
So, the first thing you mentioned was, can you move? And again, I can't talk about all the other providers, right? But as far as Oracle is concerned, and sorry, I've got to sell here a little bit. But the point is that...
We'll forgive you for that.
All right, thank you. But the applications that we are developing can be deployed at, we have this famous saying, right? My place, your place, or somebody else's. I mean, I'm still at the cloud discussion. I know it's evening. Don't let your minds wander. But it's basically, you can deploy it at your location. You can deploy it at, somebody else's location or even a public cloud. And you can move between public clouds. So I don't necessarily agree with that argument that there aren't standards. I think there are standards. I think you should be able to move, at least we believe very firmly that you should be able to move between different cloud providers and between applications. And it's really our job as providers of those applications to be able to provide that environment to you. Because if I haven't, then clearly I'm providing a lock-in, and lock-ins are not good, as we all know, right? So that's at least our commitment.
Can I start to that?
Yes, please.
I think, it's actually a valid argument. I would say that, cloud is actually an ever-evolving area as of now. It's not something which is done and dusted and baked. So it is absolutely a valid argument. That's one of the CIO's issues, which is, certainly there at the moment. And, so is reliability. Right? So now, when we look at this, again, we talked about the fact, I think all of us touched upon the fact that there are different business areas, different applications. It's not necessarily critical or non-critical, but I think the applicability of various applications to be moved into the cloud. So I'll just give you an example of ours, right, which is essentially video conferencing. But video conferencing has always been, in a sense, 90% of the deployments today are almost a private cloud. Right? That's what they are. The issue has always, of course, been moving to the public cloud. Now, one of the things that a CIO will always be challenged with is, if I move this out, to A service provider or B service provider, if I moved it to one, how do I move it to the next one, in case, something goes belly up. Now, certainly we've started working towards that. So, for example, there is something called the OVCC, right, which is the Open Visual Collaboration Consortium. So standards are an absolute must which need to be worked towards. It's not to say that video conferencing, for example, does not, is not built upon standards-based protocols. It is. But then how do you make those equally applicable across all different service providers? So that is certainly something that, we as a collective industry are working towards. So I would say that, again, you have to judge each application or each area and look at what the, pros and cons are, how open that it is, to be able to move it across from one service provider to another. And it's a judgment call. It's a judgment call which a CIO will have to make. So the answer is not always yes. The answer is not always no. But it's, it's one of those areas which a CIO has to judge and say that for this application area, certainly I can make that move. And for another one, it may be tough.
Can I add?
Please.
Okay. It is nice comments which we have heard. And in fact, we have progressed so much that even, say, 15 years or 20 years back, when we used to give outsourcing maintenance of a building or IT outsourcing and maintenance and all, there was a lot of questions being put. I know that in 1997, when we have outsourced the complete operations of IT in IFCO, my legal department has not allowed me, but with the blessings of the chief executive, we have gone for this ahead. And we have seen the fruits of this. And that model is governing now. When coming to the cloud also, you know that earlier the applications were in different shells they were running. But today, the first step people have taken, and most of the CIOs have taken, is that they have consolidated these applications. So it is a consolidated database. One database is there serving the entire organization in the country. And that benefit they have also seen. The optimization of resources, they have already seen it. The next stage came for virtualization, and many of the people have gone for this. And the third stage is now, which we are talking about, is cloud. But as far as CIOs are concerned, if we leave aside the compliance and regulatory thing, where we are not being allowed to move to a third-party location, okay, if we leave that aside, I think that from CIO's point of view, CIOs are ready to go for cloud. Cloud is a boon to the small-scale industry, no doubt, who cannot afford this kind of thing. But even big industries, CIOs can move. But the question to be asked, that it is not only CIOs, it is a responsibility of who are providing the cloud services. Are they matured enough where CIOs can think of going on to the cloud or not? So that is a real question mark is there. Are you people matured enough to provide the cloud services or not? When I'm talking about matured stage, even as on today, anybody who has had a software, who has procured a software, and again I'm referring to the ERP or the business intelligence software or any kind of analytics tool and all. Now you see the level of the services exist in the country today. When not in cloud, in your private environment, you are rolling out any applications, you do not get people to support you. Okay. What is going to happen in the cloud environment? Cloud is a lot of tie-up required of various knowledge people. Okay. Now, ERP, if suppose you have SAP you are implementing, or Oracle EBS you are implementing, or any other things you are implementing. Okay. Now, those people, unless otherwise, they have a industry knowledge, and they have the specific knowledge where this solution has been rolled out. Okay. By one thumb rule, you cannot go for cloud solution. Yeah, simple non-critical application. That's why people talk about critical and non-critical application. So why non-critical application have been mailing solution? Okay, go on cloud. No issue is there. Right? But financial applications, can you move to the cloud? Unless otherwise, without having a complete knowledge base being provided by the cloud service provider. So that is the question.
So one issue that is coming up, which hasn't come up before, is one reason perhaps some people are reluctant is they are skeptical about the maturity of the service. Would any of you like to comment on that? I mean, I'm sure this is an evolution and a work in progress, but how can you through some of your comments address that maturity issue? How should they be thinking about that?
I'll just give a perspective from small business perspective. So, it's a very right comment around maturity, and the way we have learned maturity is give them the right form of onboarding so they have active usage of the product. What we found is that if you're onboarding the customer, in the first 2 weeks, and again I'm talking small business where there is no CIO, the small business owner is a CIO, and then he has another IT manager with him. If you take the time in onboarding, which results in more than 70–80% active usage, then the product usage is very relevant. And I think the second angle we have learned is that, in cloud, I think for small businesses, sometimes we try to solve for too many things. Just stick to 2 or 3 problem set, and if that, is addressed, again, the small business evolution happens with it, rather than, really psychologically overwhelming the small business. So I think onboarding and active usage are 2 things we've really learned which have worked for.
I think Mr. Mittal gave you that, but he was really coming at it from the large enterprise perspective also. So I think
let me just add a bit from, as McAfee we do security for a living. I can tell you, it's a very valid observation. Firstly, as technology providers, do we have, firstly, all the capabilities in the country that we are providing to the extent that you want, right? So to give you an example, in 2 years, we've moved almost 90% of all our products on cloud. That's available. Now, that's happening, and that's acknowledged. That's something that we all have to achieve. But importantly, I think somebody talked about geography constraints, compliance constraints. We got to bring that capability into country. So I think we all acknowledge that that needs to be done. I think some people have taken a step forward, and that's a journey that we all have to get into. But clearly, that will determine the confidence that you get from the other side of the capability residing in your geography, and also do they have everything available on cloud is where you'll get the confidence in. I'm sure. Completely agree with you.
So Jagdish, I have this very randomly picked question, particularly randomly picked for you. Will cloud solutions make my enterprise unsafe? What are the 3 big risks of using cloud technologies? Yeah, Giri, I was joking.
So didn't look random to me, and so I'll take it as random. For someone who does security for a living, I can tell you one thing. The easiest example I always get is when you drive car, you have brakes. And most of the time, people have negative connotation of brake. Brakes slow your car down. I think brakes ensure that you can drive your car faster. So the way I look at security is, I don't think security should be seen as a challenge in cloud. Yes, it's a challenge, understood, but it should be seen as something that should be able to enable you to adopt cloud faster. So when you look at cloud, I think as someone who, when you look at, we talk to CIOs around, there are 3 or 4 things happening when you move your enterprise setup to cloud. You have applications moving on a SaaS model which fundamentally will use web technology, now in today's term web 2.0. Then you have the email traffic going in, 2 big traffics here. And then, of course, the whole identity, right, the authentication traffic. As long as you have the right policies moving from enterprise, taking care of these 3 distinct patterns on cloud, you've pretty much taken care of that. But I think the key concern that my observation has been with respect to security is there are a lot of investments CIOs make, with all due respect, but most of the time they struggle with getting a unified one single source of truth. And that doesn't enable them to take decisions. Eventually you can put the best of the investments, but if it doesn't allow you to take the decisions, it's not really helping. So I think having a unified view, being able to have one dashboard to take decisions, whether you're on enterprise, in your own premises, or cloud is important. I think these are things that we have to take care of.
Thank you. Would any of your colleagues on the panel like to comment further on that, or you want to leave it as the last word with Jagdish? Okay. Any questions to follow up on the security issue?
Well, I feel that the security, I don't think that is a much of a serious challenge for moving to the cloud.
Okay, good.
I feel by my experience, yeah, it's not.
If you keep agreeing with them, then we can't have debates like this then.
Yeah. No,
it's okay. I will turn it over to. While Sandeep has spoken a lot, we haven't asked him his question yet. So you still have the chance to have the last word.
All right, great.
And I'm actually giving you an easy one, easy sounding one, but this is a double-edged one.
All right.
Okay. So it says, what are the 3 pieces of advice you would give an enterprise CEO creating a cloud strategy? What are the 3 pieces of advice? Now, giving advice.
Enterprise CEO.
Yeah.
Okay.
So giving advice to your customer, just think about that. It's a bit of a double edge.
Yeah, we do it every day, and we've got both, right? We've got on-premise and cloud software, so it gets a little tricky. I personally think, and I think a lot of panelists have spoken about this, so you got to be very clear about the reasons for why you want to go to the cloud. I think that's fundamentally it.
So point number 1 is that. I want to capture these points.
Yeah, absolutely. So point number 1 is you got to be fundamentally clear of why you're doing it, and the subtext of that is.
Give us an example of that.
Well, like I said, agility could be one of them.
Okay.
There's a new business area that you want to go into, and it's going to take you a hell of a long time to set it up. Could be another, stuff like that, right? So that's clearly one. The second thing is be sure that, and again, back to my thing that I said, which is, my place, your place, or someone else's. So you should have the flexibility and the choice to have the final say in it. So make sure you select a standards-based provider, both SaaS, PaaS, IaaS, whatever you want to call it, and make sure that you're able to get in and get out easy, because the fundamental premise was that the barriers of entry of cloud were going to be low. And third thing, let me actually just do a show of hands. Is everybody in the room a CIO? Is there somebody from line of business?
Anybody from line of business? Yes, there's a hand up here.
Oh, there are a couple of hands.
Couple of hands, yes.
Okay, the majority is the CIO. Okay, so make sure CIO is integrated into your strategy. Make sure that the CIO calls the shots. And really, I don't want to be, jokes aside, I'm serious. I think the hidden component, there was a question you had asked, which was, what are the gotchas in all of this? The gotcha to me is integration cost. And that's why sometimes, you might move to the cloud thinking this is going to be cheap. And now you've got all your data sitting there, and the thing works, and is very successful. Now the business users don't want to let go. And now you've got to integrate this to your other applications. And that's an interesting position. I'm sure all of you have been in that position in the past. So I think it's really important to think about some of these areas.
No, thanks a lot, Sandeep. And on a slightly lighter note, I think when we publish the proceedings of this conference, we're going to title it "Your Place, My Place," or somewhere else. And of course, I'm sure that Oracle will be happy to sponsor that.
Absolutely, got it.
Any supplemental points from the panel? Yes, Virendra, please.
See, I will, if I'm the CEO, I will say move everything to the cloud and leave nothing on premise. Not a single server, not a single square feet of space, no DBAs, no Windows administrator, no support staff. Move everything to the cloud. And second thing is, use as much standard software as possible. Everybody wants to feel I'm special, I need customization. There are not many people who can afford to have their own swimming pools anymore. If you're very rich, you can. But then you'll soon figure out that you're better off. If everybody is surviving on using Salesforce CRM, you better do. And it's like buying a shirt. You can possibly tailor the length of the sleeve. But if you want it to fit exactly like yourself, then you must be very rich to have a custom tailored shirt. Not many people can have custom tailored shirts. So get used to the idea that you are no special.
There goes my Apple laptop. Please carry on. My CIO is unfortunately here.
And the third thing is focus on producing business value and not building an empire of 100 IT professionals, 1,000 IT professionals, or $500 million of equipment bought and kept on the premise. All that will not fly. I think the day is coming soon. The sooner you realize, the better it is.
That's a pretty strong note to end on, but I think we still have a question or two, unless you allow me to open it up to the audience.
I would love to be in your shoes to decide to move everything to cloud, but what happens to my existing investments?
See, we also run an organization. When I walked into Ramco, we had enough servers sitting in our premises. We had a huge amount of investment. We were running our own data center. We run everything on Amazon now. We are on Amazon Singapore, Amazon Australia, Amazon US. We faced all the challenges. That can only be an excuse. Start moving lock, stock, barrel. It will start saving money right away. It just cost us $120,000 per annum on Amazon, and every few days Amazon comes back and says, I will save you this much more. You are misutilizing your servers. And here we were paying 50 lakhs per month, just diesel cost alone, running our generators in Chennai. You can make up your mind.
Okay. I'd like to turn it over to the audience. Can we do, I think we have some people with microphones. If you can hand it out. If you raise your hand, yes. A question right here in the front row. And maybe the next person can take the mic as well, so that, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I would like to put forward a couple of things here, both for the CIOs and the CEOs out here. What we are talking about primarily are three different aspects. A, cloud. B, independent software vendors. 3, the SaaS offering. Now, if you sum all these three, what we are coming from is if we look at telecom terms, we are saying, don't go by postpaid, go by prepaid. Pay as you use. Now, if you look at cloud in other terms, if you think in a different perspective altogether, is instead of buying your hardware, you just put it on a cloud. It's a storage, right? In terms of independent software vendors, some software vendors have taken SaaS, like Remco sitting out here. Now, if you look at Mr. Mittal, what he has been saying, he said that what happens to our core critical applications which are running, which has been customized. And what happens if I move it to a cloud?
So you are coming to a question, right?
No, I'm not coming to a question.
You're commenting.
I'm commenting on
Okay, all right.
Okay. Now, if you are able to move your application to a cloud, even your critical application to a cloud, the only difference that remains is what happens to your rest of the silos-based applications which are probably integrated to it and which is not SaaS-based because it cannot be pay-per-used. Now, at that point of time, probably my suggestion here is that we should also come up with service delivery platforms which enables legacy-based, traditional-based architecture to perform as multi-tenancies on this cloud so that cost of investments are down. Because investments are going up only because the ISVs are charging for changing the architecture to their base model. If they are saved on that one, customers are also saved with that.
Any comments on that? I don't think anybody
I just want to say that multi-tenancy is very difficult to write, and I won't expect any CIO organization to attempt it. It is meant for ISVs who cater to thousands of companies. So yeah, as long as they can make it work on a browser-based platform with nothing on the client, zero footprint on the client, it makes sense.
That's right. That's why the service delivery platform needs to be integrated with the cloud.
Absolutely. So if they're core applications, they can move to a platform which is browser-friendly, zero client. They can integrate with the cloud application. If it's heavy client-friendly, then it's going to be an interface which is going to be fairly complex task.
Yes, but still I think it will be on the cheaper side.
Yeah, fair enough.
Actually,
Mr. Mittal, you wanted to comment? Yeah.
Actually, when I was commenting this, I was presuming that one is I was presuming multi-tenancy.
Correct.
Okay. So for your legacy applications also. At the same time, if you want to be successful in IT, my principle is, or what my philosophy is, that I keep on moving with the advancement in IT. So as on today also, if there is any legacy application in our organizations, all of them have been converted into web environment as on today. So I consider moving along with the time, and I presume that also, that will be the situation.
So our panelist, our third CIO panelist is here, and she's in the audience. You can actually technically ask 7 questions. That's what you've forgone. But I'll let you ask one first. Yes.
Yeah, obviously I'll certainly take up only one. Sorry for being late. Okay, so see, we've been talking about cloud for nearly 3 odd years now, and most of the CEO panelists sitting here have been into this business for quite some time now. Yes, it is a natural transition for any business line to get settled, and certainly that is something that everyone is doing. At the same time, most of us have experienced that, the simpler applications or independent applications like mails or, applications like mails could be taken onto what easier candidates to go onto cloud. At the same time, if you are running a small business which has got very simple or, small set of, environment, they can also be easily taken out from the on-premise to a cloud environment. But when it comes to a typical enterprise which has got multiple applications, multiple business lines, lot of compliance issues, so there comes a real complexity, So there, the real, the path of transition is not very, very clear, First of all, when you run a mission critical application on cloud which needs to talk to a real-time basis to, an application which is hosted outside the cloud. And if you have to create a communication channel over public internet, over an internet lease line using a VPN, there it becomes a challenge, So I have personally experienced that kind of an issue. So would certainly like to hear from the CEOs of the IT organizations. What are they doing about it? Are they trying to collaborate with the service providers of India and to set up a stable connectivity with enterprises so that the applications can be easily integrated with the other environments. At the same time, what about the regulatory constraints which are there with certain industries at the moment, especially the BFSI, where we are not allowed to take the data out of the country. Most of the cloud providers presently here, have their setup outside the country. So, I mean, these two are the main concerns that the large enterprises are facing about cloud. Despite, being fully committed to implement this kind of a solution, because it takes away a lot of headaches, pains, and issues to the CIO. So, looking forward to answer.
No, thank you. I think you made up for not being here by bringing up two issues that that actually haven't come up. So I'd love to hear your comments. I think the regulatory issue and the connectivity issue are really the two.
See, the regulatory issue pertains to HR data and CRM data and financial data. So cloud is available in most countries. As far as Europe goes, it should not go out of EU. So from our angle, if you're in Amazon Ireland, we cover whole of EU. We can do work for any country in EU.
What about Indian company? I think that's what...
Indian company, so you can be with Sifi, NetMagic, they're offering Elastic Clouds. Right. And there are many more vendors coming in, so you can get Elastic Cloud from any one of them. And as far as CRM data is concerned, many banking regulators have clamped down upon banks. So I saw a lot of people who had implemented Salesforce.com moving on to other CRM, premise-based CRM. But I think regulators will also see the light of the day, understand it very soon that they need
So are you all working on some of these issues from a regulatory standpoint?
Yeah, so let me actually take that. So, so having a data center in India is pretty shortly going to become a requirement. And I actually sit on some of the government panels thinking about e-government applications, right? So clearly, if you want to participate in the space, you better start thinking of putting a local data center. So we are actively thinking about it because I think from a regulatory standpoint, that's exceedingly important. And the other questions you raised, I think some of those we've already kind of...
No, I think the connectivity question was the really other question.
Yeah, the connectivity question, I think, again, most of us work with the telecom companies and, given what's happening on the 3G and now the 4G front, and hopefully telecom companies are going to continue making sustained investments, I think you are going to get better and better speeds. At least I've seen some improvement in that. What's also happening is what, this so-called Bharat broadband is doing. So again, I don't know how spread out your offices are, but if they are in smaller locations, I think you're going to see a little bit of better response times come out of those. But clearly, this is work in progress. I mean, we are a large country, and we will leapfrog technologies, but I think it'll take a fair bit of time to get some of those things going. But I think the serious discussion topic for most of the providers is really, are you going to put your stake in the ground and start putting something in India, which is a more serious question. There are a huge amount of issues with data. We shouldn't get into here, but
I think as far as the connectivity is concerned, whether you move to the cloud or you don't move to the cloud, connectivity issue is always there if you are operating at multi-locations.
Sure.
Unless if you are operating from one office, one building kind of thing, another LAN environment, then it is a different thing. But if you are moving at, say, a number of locations outside this building, then you are facing the connectivity there also. So is with the cloud also. And what you are doing there, depending on what kind of office you are having, how critical applications they are having, you are going to have the bandwidth from one service provider, then you are having from second, then you are going to have even from third. In our cases, we have taken bandwidth for one location by 3 and even 4 service providers. So if one is not working, second is there, second is not working, third is there. The same kind of situation is going to happen in the cloud also. At least one good thing is that whosoever is launching the data centers and providing the cloud services, they are going to have a number of service providers at their end side. So it depends on your end. Your end, you have to go for those service providers.
One important point I want to add in is cloud, with all the disadvantages we talked about, but the biggest advantage is scalability. You can kind of just move up ramp up very fast, which you cannot do when you go in-house. So those are very critical.
The agility point was made, but that's, I think, implicit in that is the scalability point as well. I think there was a question here.
Just add on that, just a lighter side of that, in our CIO community.
If you can.
Loud.
No, it's on, yeah.
In our CIO community, it's already, there is a proverb called easy to manage and difficult to divert for the cloud, correct? So that's the same thing Mr. Mittal comment about that. Just I want to ask very specific question to Mr. Agrawal and Mr. Sandeep for that. They have on-premise server-based application earlier. Now they have moved into the on-demand. Mostly we have seen that in smaller or mid-sized companies, they are moving into the cloud. I'm talking about the critical application, not about a mailing solution and all that. I'm talking about the application like financial application and all that. What's the reason that maybe the region is being CapEx or OpEx model for that? But what is the reason for the big companies not moving to the cloud? Do you have any strategy for that, sir?
I think a lot of big companies are moving to the cloud.
No, I think I have already replied, Jana. This depends why the large companies or enterprises are not, as on today, moving to the cloud. I already said that it depends on the maturity level on the other side. So, and that I personally feel, or because I keep on talking to the CIO community, and the thing is coming ultimately that the service providers are not matured enough as on today, or services are not matured to move to the cloud situation. So, though the CIO cannot take a risk going to the cloud situation on critical applications. So,
I think you were starting to respond. I think Virendra, were you responding?
I'm not going to talk on the maturity side of it. So
no, but to his point about large enterprises, you were saying that large
enterprises are going to cloud fairly rapidly. If you see Workday, which had a revenue of $250 million and an IPO value of $7-8 billion, is going in for large enterprises. They're not going in for small-scale customers. The largest enterprises are signing up for their HR software. If you see Commonwealth Bank of Australia, they spend about $1.8 to $2 billion on IT every year. Their CIO has gone on record saying that he will spend not $1 on premise. That's a bank. Australian banks covered with regulation. So there are a lot of large entities moving on there. And many organizations are betting the farm on running their business on cloud. So if you take the likes of Netflix and so on, I mean, Amazon went down for a few minutes and you could not download a movie. So their entire business models runs, and there are enough companies running business models in it. I mean, we can bury our head in the sand as long as we feel like, but the fact is the change is taking place very rapidly.
So let me just give you an Indian perspective. I mean, CB and all that are our customers as well. But from an Indian perspective, I've actually seen an uptick in the last 2 quarters. So in the last 6 months, I've really seen an uptick on companies and large enterprises going for the cloud. Now, there are certain areas they're choosing to do. One is clearly human capital management and talent acquisition and talent management. That seems to be a very easy target for a whole lot of people. I'm not talking about payroll, by the way. I'm talking about everything else outside of payroll. That seems to be an easy target because there aren't company-specific stuff there, right? So that seems to be an easy target. The other one is Salesforce automation, where everybody knows, and service CRM. These are the 3 areas that I've seen where a lot of large enterprises, and if you meet me later, I can talk to you about what those enterprises are doing with it. But there are significantly large enterprises going that way in India.
Neeraj, you had I'll actually add to that. So, from a perspective of, again, what's critical and what's not critical is, again, a definition which different people may have differing views on. For us, for instance, video conferencing is very critical. If it is something which is sitting on the cloud and it goes down at a point in time when the CEO is sitting there trying to talk to someone, it's highly critical. Right? So from that perspective, absolutely, we see a lot of customers globally and in India actually moving to the cloud, and these are large organizations. On October 8th, we actually had a strategy day at the NASDAQ. We had the Deloitte CIO sitting there. And one of the things that he spoke about was the fact that he would love to move most of his infrastructure into the cloud so long as he got a scalable, reliable platform for video conferencing, at least going forward. We had a conversation with the CTO of Citigroup, exactly the same conversation. So, if you look at these are very, very large organizations. We've got cloud offerings with IBM at this point in time. IBM is using video conferencing in a cloud offering at this point. So when you look at some of these customers, and there are a whole lot of Indian customers as well. Now, so when we look at customers are choosing to, large enterprises are choosing to test the waters with the cloud and move in that direction. There is absolutely no question about it. So it's not that, it's the province of, let's say, small to medium enterprises. Large enterprises absolutely doing it. And depending on, let's say, government, I'll give you an example of government. NIC itself, let's say, runs a cloud, here in India, with services being provided to various government entities. And I'll give you an example of, say, an education cloud, which we are running with the state of Victoria in Australia. Over there are about 4,000 classrooms connecting into a private education cloud run by the state government. Right. Now, so therefore, there are all kinds of experiments being done with the cloud at this point in time, and it's, in my opinion, it's absolutely 100% true that large enterprises are actually beginning to move, or are moving at the moment, to cloud offerings.
I think there was a question in the back. I can't see you, but please ask.
Yeah, I'm Puneet here. I just have one question to the panel. What are the panel deciding, or the future companies deciding on providing network as a service in the near future? Probably at times when we have, unlike BFSI vertical, where you have restrictions on the data not going out. Same as with the telecom billing platforms, which restricts the data to be hosted within home country. So at that time, we face a lot of issues if we have co-locations outside India, and the telecom governance does not allow us to retrieve that data from home locations.
Network as a service?
No comments really, because the network is available and it is available as a service. What are new emerging themes on that? Essentially is how networks can be managed for organizations from the cloud. Okay.
Is that what you are talking about? Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah.
No, it's in terms of certain applications that I'm talking about. See, the way you talk about different services that cloud-based technologies give, right. Do we have anything coming up as network as a service? Or it's just a myth right now?
I think network as a service is already available. It is based on, most of the operators in US have moved on to how much you consume.
Yep.
So the amount of packets of data you transfer, they charge you as per that. So that I would call network as a service. What possibly is an emerging field which Rajesh was possibly trying to allude was, there's something called software-defined networking is the fastest growing field in the world today. And if you are following a company like Riverbed, which is the hottest property in town, is for managing your networks single-handedly through using cloud technology. That is another thing I think Rajiv was talking about.
No, actually,
network as a service is available even now.
What I was really referring to is the fact that network has complexity, and management of that complexity in end customer locations, okay, in large parts around the world is becoming difficult. So there are now service providers that sit on the cloud and who have on-premise equipment that manage and monitor your network and optimize the network for you to consume it in the most optimal way, right? Those kind of services are evolving on the network, right? But network as a service is, it's basically all the pipes that come into your facility, and where you have definite SLAs that are put together by the service providers. Unless I'm missing something here.
I'm going to try and close this here. I think we've had is there a last question somewhere, Giri? No? Okay. There's a question here.
Sir, I want to ask one question. As a good service provider company in the field of cloud computing, what security services we should provide for our customers to secure the cloud?
Jagdish, you have a...
Looks like let me take a first stab at that.
Looks like they should talk to you.
We can have more chat later on that. But I think pretty much hearing from, we talked about two things. Firstly, got to have most of the products available on cloud. So that's available. And local data centers, we talked about that regulation. So those two things being in place. From an adoption standpoint, globally and in India, the areas where we're seeing adoption in the security services are on the email security side, web security, endpoint. These are areas that we're clearly seeing positive traction. And as organizations, banks, government are building SOCs, security operating centers, where they're monitoring traffic and patterns across to figure out what's going on, the whole foundation of that, which is a product called SIM, again, it's an incident manager, most of people are looking at a cloud offering there as well. So significant maturity moving around there as well.
Thank you very much. This is the fact that there is there another last question? Okay.
Well, we have three blocks. One is public cloud, then private cloud, and on-premise infrastructure. Okay. Small business can move to public cloud. I can understand the benefit. Even large organizations are moving to public cloud. Is private cloud being treated as transitional phase that, in the long term, people will, in a short term, they'll move to private cloud, then in the long term, move to public cloud? If that is the long-term vision for cloud business, what are the differential factor that one can take in for the mid-size business to decide quickly, that you guys can describe in one paragraph? I'm looking for how do you communicate so easily so that they can take decision, not like you have to take a call, what's your business,
So you are saying what is the formula to decide between the transition to private versus public? Is that the question?
From your on-premise infrastructure to private.
On-premise to private?
Private, yeah.
Or the choice between on-premise to straight public and on-premise to straight private?
Once they test the private cloud, maybe, they can move to...
So you are just asking about on-premise to private.
Private.
What is the justification? What is the quick justification?
And what's the, differential cost, maybe,
Yeah.
So, fingertip kind of...
So if I can I take a shot?
7 tips.
Yeah.
Yeah.
More often than not, the private cloud implementations that we have seen are rationalization and optimization of infrastructure that large enterprises already have. And once the rationalization and optimization is done, to get a better sense of assigning appropriate cost weightages to who's consuming the IT infrastructure. In a conventional architecture, that is a little difficult. The second way, of course, is once you have the whole consolidation, virtualization in place, and more effective utilization of the infrastructure. The next step then, of course, is what do you do with the newer services that you need, which is where the whole toss-up happens on whether you want to do it on premises inside the organization or you source it from a service provider outside. But more often than not, private cloud implementations are more rationalization exercises.
But I think his specific question was for mid-sized enterprises. So
yeah, I mean, I can actually answer it quite simply. It's a no-brainer, right? I mean, you've got a set of infrastructure running a set of applications, and that is running it full tilt, while there's another set of infrastructure and running a set of applications which is not being deployed. So it's a fairly no-brainer kind of a thing. We've seen improvements of 30 to 50%. Consolidation, virtualization, and then people have gone on to doing things like database as a service. So that's the simplest thing to do. If you do these 3 things, you will gain tremendous amount of advantages and you get a nice little private cloud setup. And like I said, you will see anywhere from 30 to 50% gains just purely doing this. And there are various sorts of templates available. You can pay a lot of money and get Gartner to do it, or somebody else to do it, but to my mind, it's a very logical, no-brainer kind of a thing. You can create a business case out of it. Like I said, there are lots of templates available. I'm sure Mr. Mittal and you guys would have some templates that you can share probably, which are ready-made, and you can punch in your data and see what happens. Right?
Thank you. I think I'd like to close this on that. I'm not an expert on cloud. I'm not a CIO, nor do I head a technology company, but I do head a small, mid-size or small-size business, depending on what you say. I'm building a few educational institutions, and I have to tell you that for us, this is not even a question, because you kind of start with the cloud. Yeah. Right now, I'm looking to get services for a 5,000-person student university, and we are working with a number of your competitors and others on just saying, how do we completely not invest in infrastructure? And frankly, it's very interesting, because that decision for me is the same as a company today that is specializing in providing student housing. So instead of building the housing, they will build it for you and you pay them a certain rent, and they are the same issues, or will they provide the right service, and so on. Interestingly, my memory goes back to nearly 20 years ago, when I was a young consultant for McKinsey and was consulting at a big bank in Canada on how to reduce their IT costs. And I remember that they had a large data room or a server farm, which was literally as big as a football field. This is one of the top 3 or 4 banks in Canada. And right in the heart of the city, in Toronto, they had this real estate. And I still remember that, I remember the name of the gentleman. Sometimes you remember these incidents, they are so imprinted in your head. I worked at McKinsey for 13 years, and there were 2 times when a client actually wrote a letter to my superior saying I should be fired. And this was one of those times. And I suggested to him that he could actually reduce the size of his server farm and cut costs by some 60 or 70%. And he actually wrote a letter to my manager saying that I was arrogant, I didn't know what I was talking about, and I should be fired. I still have that letter somewhere. It's always humbling to get such letters, because you do get a bit arrogant if you're successful, and particularly if you're a consultant advising people. But it so happened that I was suggesting this because I had worked at another bank where they also had a football field for a data server room, and they used to actually play football in it because they had moved it all out. And literally, I mean, in North America, they play that throw football. So it was so large and it had become empty, and they didn't want to sell it. So during the breaks, we used to go and play football. It was so large. And I still remember that site. So what I did was I took Bert Napier, who was the CIO. I said, I'm happy to resign, but just come with me to see this place. And I remember going over there, and he just couldn't believe it. He was just shocked. I think change is always a very difficult thing. I think we are going through a massive change, and that's why for the first time that we are doing this conference, which we are calling Inflexion, because we want to pick up topics that are truly inflection topics. And I think we are going through an inflection. I hear a lot of people say, oh, cloud has always been happening, and so it is just, yes, everything is a gradual process. But the question is how gradual and how fast is it going to be? I think it is happening quite fast. And with every day, the so-called resistance or so-called problems are getting chipped away. It will never be perfect, because if it is perfect, then we won't have a living to make anymore. It's good to have CIOs and vendors and IT issues there. But jokes apart, this is really a journey, and it will always be work in progress. I mean, the issue of whether we should have one kind of laptop or the other kind of laptop is always work in progress. The issue of what kind of desktop we should have and how much, whether we should have a thin client or not, is still a work in progress, right? It's just that it's relegated to the bottom of the priority list. So at least that's my view. I take a very positive view of all this. And I think tensions, the kind of tension that we are having between vendors and service consumers is good. It's good for the industry. It's good for you to know that there are still some misperceptions or real perceptions about your maturity. And if it is truly a misperception, I think you can address that very easily. And if it is a real perception, if it is a real issue, then I'm sure you're working on it. And I'm sure that's true for regulation, network connectivity, and so on. So I'd like to give our panel a big hand. First, a big hand to our 2 CIOs. and our third CIO who came late but made up for it, and to our 7 panelists for braving the questions. Thank you very much for being here. A very big hand, and thank you all, and please join us for dinner.
Thank you. That went well.